Welcome to my channel Truth Drama Stories. My name is Daniel Carter, and this story is about the night my father slapped me, threw me out of his house, and called me a failure in front of everyone. He told me I would never survive without his name. He told me I would come crawling back. But years later he was the one standing at my door begging for help. And by then I was no longer the son he remembered. It was a cold October evening when everything changed. The air smelled like rain, and the sky hung low over the city like it was waiting for something terrible to happen. I stood in my father's office, staring at the man who had controlled every part of my life since I was born. His name was Richard Carter. He was a powerful man, owner of Carter Logistics, one of the biggest transportation companies in Illinois. People respected him. People feared him. But I had never seen him look at me with as much anger as he did that night. "You're quitting?" he asked. His voice was calm, but I could feel the storm behind it. "Yes," I said quietly. My hands were shaking, but I kept them at my sides. "I've made my decision." He leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers pressed together under his chin. The office was silent except for the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. "You made your decision," he repeated. It was not a question. It was a warning. "I don't want to run Carter Logistics," I said. "I never did. I want to build something of my own." His eyes narrowed. "Something of your own," he said slowly. "Yes." The word felt small in my mouth. Weak. But it was the truth. For 26 years, I had lived under his shadow. I went to the schools he chose. I studied the subjects he approved. I worked in his company from the moment I graduated college. Every decision had been his. Except this one. "You're throwing away everything," he said. "I'm not throwing it away," I replied. "I'm choosing my own path." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew there was no going back. He stood up slowly. The chair creaked behind him. "You have no path," he said. "You have this company. You have this family. Without it, you have nothing." I swallowed hard. "I have myself." The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever felt. And then, his hand moved. The slap came out of nowhere. Sharp. Violent. Final. My head snapped to the side, and the sound echoed through the office. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I tasted blood. I tasted disbelief. I looked at him, my cheek burning, my eyes wide with shock. He had never hit me before. Not once in my life. Until now. "You ungrateful boy," he said. His voice was trembling with rage. "Everything you have is because of me." I said nothing, because in that moment something inside me broke. Not loudly, not violently, quietly, like glass cracking under pressure. "I gave you everything," he continued. "And this is how you repay me?" "I didn't ask for this life," I said. My voice was barely above a whisper. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. "Yes, you did," he said. "The moment you were born into this family, you accepted it. That wasn't my choice. It is now." He pointed toward the door. "Get out." The words hung in the air. Heavy. Unforgiving. "Leave this office," he said. "Leave this house. And don't come back until you're ready to apologize." I didn't move. Not yet. I was waiting. Waiting for him to stop. Waiting for him to take it back. Waiting for him to be my father again. But he didn't. Instead, he turned his back on me. That hurt more than the slap. I walked out of the office slowly. Each step felt unreal. The hallway outside was quiet, but I knew people had heard. They always heard. My mother, Margaret Carter, stood near the staircase. Her face was pale. Her eyes were full of fear. "Daniel," she said softly. She stepped toward me. But then she stopped. She looked toward the office. She looked back at me. And she said nothing else. That was the moment I realized she wasn't going to help me. She wasn't going to defend me. She wasn't going to choose me. She had already chosen him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But her apology meant nothing. Because she wasn't sorry enough to stop him. I nodded once. Not because I forgave her, but because I understood. I walked past her and went upstairs to my room. The room I had lived in for 26 years. The room that no longer belonged to me. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet. My hands moved automatically. Clothes. shoes, a jacket, my laptop. Each item felt like a piece of a life I was leaving behind. I paused when I reached my desk. There was a photograph sitting in a silver frame. It was taken 10 years ago. My father stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. We were both smiling. We looked like a family. I picked it up and stared at it. I didn't recognize that version of us anymore. I placed the photo face down on the desk, and I left it there. Downstairs, the front door waited. My father was standing near it. He hadn't changed his mind. He hadn't softened. He hadn't even looked at me. "You'll fail," he said as I approached. His voice was cold, certain. "You'll come back," he added. "They always do." I stopped in front of him. For a moment I almost spoke, almost begged, almost apologized. But then I remembered the slap. I remembered the way he looked at me, like I was nothing. "I won't," I said. He laughed. Not kindly, not warmly, cruelly. "We'll see." He opened the door. The cold air rushed inside. And just like that, I stepped out of my father's house. The door closed behind me with a quiet click. Not loud, not dramatic, but permanent. I stood on the sidewalk holding my suitcase, staring at the house that had once been my home. The windows glowed with warm light. From the outside, everything looked normal, perfect. No one would ever know what had just happened inside. I took a deep breath. The air burned my lungs. I had nowhere to go. No plan. No safety net. Just silence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a moment my heart lifted. Maybe it was my mother. Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she was calling to tell me to come back. But when I looked at the screen, it was not her. It was my friend Ethan Brooks. "Hey," he said when I answered. "You okay?" I hesitated. No one had ever asked me that before. "Not really. I just left," I said. He didn't ask questions. He didn't judge. "Come to my place," he said. "You can stay as long as you need." Those words saved me. That night I slept on Ethan's couch. The ceiling above me was unfamiliar. The air smelled different. Everything felt temporary. I stared into the darkness and replayed the slap in my mind, over and over. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. Something stronger. Resolve. The next morning I woke up early. Ethan was already in the kitchen. He handed me a cup of coffee. "You'll figure it out," he said. I nodded, but I didn't know how. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. I worked whatever jobs I could find. Delivery driver. Warehouse assistant. Night shift clerk. Each paycheck was small. Each day was hard. There were nights when I wanted to quit. Nights when I wanted to go back. Nights when I stood outside my father's house, staring at the windows, wondering if he would open the door. But I never knocked. Because I knew the truth. If I went back, I would lose myself forever. One evening, after a long shift, I sat alone in my small apartment. The walls were bare. The furniture was cheap. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, everything I had belonged to me. No one could take it away. No one could control it. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen. My reflection stared back at me. Tired. Older. Different. I remembered something my father used to say. "You are nothing without my company." The words echoed in my mind. And for the first time, I smiled. Because he was wrong. He just didn't know it yet. The night my father threw me out did not end when the door slammed. It stayed with me. It followed me down the empty street, under the flickering streetlights, into the cold silence that wrapped around my chest like iron chains. My name is Daniel Carter. And that night I stopped being someone's son. I became someone who had nothing. I walked without knowing where I was going. My cheeks still burned from the slap. My ears still echoed with his voice. "You are no son of mine." Those words were heavier than the cold air. Behind me, the Carter mansion stood tall and proud, its windows glowing with warm light. It looked untouched, peaceful, as if nothing had happened, as if I had never existed there at all. I stopped at the corner and looked back one last time. Not because I wanted to go back, but because some small broken part of me hoped the door would open. It didn't. The wind answered instead. I swallowed hard and turned away. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not violently, quietly, permanently. I had no bag, no money, no phone, just the clothes I was wearing and the truth I could not escape. My own father had erased me. Hours passed as I wandered through the sleeping city. The streets were different at night, colder, less forgiving. Every passing car reminded me of what I had lost. Not the luxury, not the comfort, but the illusion that I belonged somewhere. By morning, exhaustion began to win. My legs ached. My throat burned. My stomach twisted with hunger. I found a bench near a small bus station and sat down. For the first time, the silence caught up with me. And in that silence, the memories came. My father's voice, his disappointment, his anger, and the moment his hand struck my face. I pressed my palms together and stared at the ground. I did nothing wrong, I whispered. But the words felt weak. Because when the person who raised you decides you are nothing, part of you begins to believe. A few hours later, the city woke up. People rushed past me. They had places to go, lives to live. I had neither. I stood up slowly. My body protested. My mind was numb. But I knew one thing. I could not stay there. I walked into the bus station and approached the counter. The woman behind the glass looked at me carefully. She noticed my tired eyes, my empty hands. Yes, she asked gently. I hesitated. Then I said, I need to go somewhere. Anywhere cheap. She studied me for a moment longer. Not with judgment, with understanding. She named a city 3 hours away. I nodded. She gave me a ticket. I never asked why she trusted me when I said I would pay later. Maybe she saw something in my eyes. Or maybe she had once been lost too. The bus ride was quiet. I sat near the window and watched my old life disappear mile by mile. Every tree, every building, every familiar road, gone. I did not cry. Not because I was strong, but because I was empty. When I arrived, the city felt unfamiliar. Larger, louder, colder. I did not care who I was. I did not care who I had been. And maybe that was exactly what I needed. The first few days were the hardest. I slept where I could, ate when I could. Sometimes I questioned everything. Sometimes I questioned myself. But I never questioned one thing. I would not go back. Not to beg. Not to apologize. Not to exist on my knees. One afternoon, after another failed job attempt, I sat outside a small construction office. My body was weak. My hope was weaker. An older man stepped outside. He had gray hair and tired eyes. His name tag read Thomas. He looked at me. Not quickly. Carefully. You looking for work? He asked. I nodded. He crossed his arms. You ever done construction? No. He studied me for a few seconds. Then he said something that changed everything. Can you learn? I answered without hesitation. Yes. He nodded once. Show up tomorrow at 6. That was it. No questions about my past. No questions about my name. Just a chance. And sometimes that's all a person needs to survive. Construction was brutal. The hours were long. The work was unforgiving. My hands blistered. My muscles screamed. But every drop of sweat meant something. It meant I was still standing. It meant I was still fighting. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year. I saved every dollar I could. I rented a small room. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time since that night, I began to feel something unfamiliar. Stability. Thomas became more than a boss. He became someone who saw me. One evening, as we sat outside after work, he asked, You ever think about going back? The question froze me. I stared ahead. No, I said quietly. He nodded. Good. I looked at him surprised. He continued. Some doors close for a reason. I didn't answer. But I never forgot those words. 2 years passed. I was no longer the broken boy on the bus station bench. I was stronger, wiser, harder. I learned everything I could. Not just construction, business, management, systems. I watched. I listened. I grew. One day, Thomas handed me a set of keys. I looked at him confused. You're ready, he said. For what? He smiled faintly. To lead. That moment stayed with me. because someone believed in me. Not because I was his son, but because I had earned it. For the first time in my life, respect did not come from blood. It came from who I became. But even then, the past never fully disappeared. It waited. Silent. Patient. One night, after finishing late paperwork, I sat alone in the small office. The room was quiet. The air was still. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to remember her. Emily. My younger sister. She had not spoken that night. She had just stood there. Frozen. Torn. I remembered her eyes. They weren't angry. They were afraid. Afraid to lose him. Afraid to lose me. I wondered if she ever thought about me. I wondered if she ever missed her brother. I wondered if she ever knew the truth. The question stayed unanswered. Until one afternoon. I was reviewing project files when the office door opened. Thomas stepped inside. "Daniel," he said carefully, "there's someone here to see you." I frowned. "I'm busy." He didn't move. His expression had changed. "It's important." Something in his voice made my chest tighten. I stood up slowly and walked toward the front office. Every step felt heavier. Every breath felt tighter. Then I saw her. Emily stood near the doorway. She looked different. Older. Thinner. But I would have recognized her anywhere. Time stopped. Neither of us spoke at first. We just stared at each other. Her eyes filled with tears. "Daniel," she whispered. Her voice broke on my name. And in that moment, every wall I had built began to tremble. Not fall, but tremble. I stayed where I was. I didn't move closer. I didn't speak. Because part of me was still standing in that hallway. Still hearing that slap. Still hearing those words. She took a small step forward. "I've been looking for you," she said. I forced myself to speak. "Why?" The question was cold. But my heart wasn't. She hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly. "Because everything is falling apart." Silence filled the room. I felt something shift inside me. Not sympathy. Not yet. Something else. Something cautious. I crossed my arms. "What does that have to do with me?" She swallowed hard. "Dad." She stopped. The word hung between us like poison. I said nothing. She continued anyway. "He's losing the company." My heartbeat slowed. Not from shock. From distance. It no longer felt like my world. "It's not my problem," I said. My voice was calm. Controlled. She stepped closer. "Daniel, please." I raised my hand slightly. Stop. The air between us felt fragile. "He made his choice," I said quietly. She looked down. Tears fell freely now. "He's not the same." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "People don't change that easily," I said. She looked up at me. "He's desperate." The word settled heavily in my chest. Desperate. I remembered his strength. His pride. His certainty. The idea of him being desperate felt impossible. And yet, Emily stood here. Crying. Begging. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. Her hands shook as she held it toward me. "You need to see this." I didn't take it. "I don't need anything from him." Her voice cracked. "This isn't from him." I hesitated. That pause felt longer than it was. Slowly, I reached forward and took the folder. It was lighter than I expected. But somehow it felt heavier than anything I had ever held. I opened it. Inside were financial reports. Legal notices. Debt warnings. Numbers circled in red. Losses. Massive losses. My eyes moved across the pages. And then I saw something that made my stomach tighten. Transfers. Large amounts of money. Moved quietly. Carefully. Repeatedly. Not recent. Years old. Dating back to before the night he threw me out. I looked up at Emily. "What is this?" She wiped her tears. "I didn't understand it either," she said. My hands tightened around the papers. Because deep inside, I felt something worse than anger. I felt clarity beginning to form. And clarity is dangerous. Because once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. I stared at the numbers, but they no longer looked like numbers. They looked like pieces of a lie. Each transfer was precise. Clean. hidden inside normal business expenses. But when placed together, they formed a pattern that could not be ignored. Money had been leaving the company long before the night my father disowned me. Quietly, carefully, deliberately. I lifted my eyes to Emily. Who else knows about this? She shook her head. No one. I found it by accident. Her voice was fragile, afraid of what the truth might become if spoken too loudly. I closed the folder slowly. The office suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier, because this was no longer about pain. This was about truth. And truth changes everything. I walked past her and sat down at the desk. My mind moved faster than my body. Years of learning. Years of watching Thomas run his business. Years of understanding how companies breathe and bleed. This was bleeding. Badly. Emily remained standing. She looked like she didn't belong there. Like she was still part of a world I had left behind. Why bring this to me? I asked. She hesitated. Because you're the only one who can understand it. I leaned back in the chair. The only one. It was strange hearing those words. Once I had been the one they dismissed. The one they silenced. Now I was the one they needed. Does he know you came here? I asked. She shook her head quickly. No. Why not? Her eyes dropped. Because he wouldn't have let me. That answer told me more than she realized. He was still controlling everything. Still deciding who could speak. Still deciding what truth was allowed to exist. I opened the folder again and studied the dates. One date stood out. The night before he threw me out. A large transfer. Larger than the others. My chest tightened. Emily, I said quietly. What happened the week he disowned me? She looked confused. You remember, I said. Something was different. She didn't answer immediately. She thought. Then her expression changed. He was stressed, she said slowly. More than usual. I stayed silent. She continued. He kept arguing with someone on the phone. My fingers pressed harder against the paper. Did you ever hear a name? I asked. She nodded slightly. Victor. The name hit something deep in my memory. Victor Hayes. My father's business partner. A man who smiled too easily. A man who watched too carefully. I remembered the way he used to look at me. Not with warmth. With calculation. I stood up suddenly. Emily flinched slightly at the movement. Daniel. I walked to the window and stared outside. The street below was calm. Peaceful. But inside me a storm was forming. Because the truth was beginning to breathe. And it was darker than I expected. I need more, I said. Emily frowned. More. Everything you can find. Financial records. Emails. Contracts. She looked nervous. If he finds out. He won't, I said firmly. She stared at me. For the first time since arriving, she saw something new in my eyes. Not the broken brother she remembered. Someone else. Someone stronger. Someone who was no longer afraid. She nodded slowly. I'll try. After she left, I stood alone in the office. The folder sat on the desk like a loaded weapon. Because knowledge is power. And power changes the balance. Thomas entered quietly. He looked at the folder. Then at me. You okay? I nodded once. No. He waited. I appreciated that about him. He never forced answers. He let me give them. It's my father's company, I said finally. His expression didn't change. He already understood more than I had said. Trouble, he asked. Yes. He nodded slowly. Then he said something simple. Do what lets you sleep at night. He left after that. No advice. No pressure. Just trust. I sat down again and opened the folder once more. This time I didn't read it as a son. I read it as a businessman. The losses were real. But they weren't random. They were controlled. Strategic. Someone had been draining the company carefully, so it wouldn't collapse immediately. They wanted it weak. Not dead. Not yet. I leaned back and closed my eyes. And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. The night he threw me out was the same night the largest transfer happened. The same night he blamed me. The same night he erased me. My eyes opened slowly. Because suddenly the question was no longer why he threw me out. The question was, what did he need to hide? The next few days passed in silence. But inside that silence, everything was moving. Emily sent more documents, emails, contracts, hidden agreements, and each piece revealed something worse. Victor Hayes had gained more control over the company over the years. Quietly, legally, patiently, like a parasite. I printed everything, organized everything, created timelines, patterns, connections. The truth was no longer invisible. It was undeniable. One evening Emily called. Her voice was shaking. "He knows," she whispered. My grip tightened on the phone. "Knows what?" "That I came to see you." I felt my chest harden. "How?" "I don't know." He just knew. Fear lived inside her voice. Pure. Real. "Is he there?" I asked. "No." I exhaled slowly. "Listen to me," I said calmly. "Do not tell him anything else." She nodded even though I couldn't see her. "Okay." She paused. Then she asked the question she had been holding inside. "Are you going to help him?" I didn't answer immediately, 'cause I didn't know. He had broken me, destroyed me, erased me. But the company was something else. It wasn't just him. It was employees, families, lives connected to its survival. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. After the call ended, I sat in the dark office alone. The only light came from the desk lamp, cast long shadows across the room, shadows that reminded me of the past. I opened the final document Emily had sent, and that was when I saw it. A contract, signed the week before he threw me out. My father's signature, Victor's signature, and one line that made everything stop. Transfer of executive authority upon incapacity or removal. My heart slowed, because I understood. Victor wasn't just draining the company. He was preparing to take it. Legally. Completely. And my father had either been blind or trapped. I leaned forward, staring at the signature. The handwriting was strong, confident. But now it looked like the signature of a man standing at the edge of a cliff. I whispered the words without meaning to. "What did you do?" But there was no answer. Only silence. And in that silence I realized something else. Victor succeeded. Everything my father built would disappear. And the truth of what happened to me would disappear with it. I leaned back slowly, because this was no longer about revenge. This was about control. About truth. About power. For years I had nothing. No voice. No place. No name. But now, I had something stronger than anger. I had evidence. And evidence does not feel. It does not forgive. It does not forget. It only waits. And for the first time since the night I was thrown out, I wasn't the powerless one anymore. I didn't sleep that night. The contract lay open on my desk, its words burned into my mind. Transfer of executive authority upon incapacity or removal. It wasn't just a clause. It was a weapon. Victor Hayes hadn't been stealing randomly. He had been preparing the company for collapse. Preparing for the exact moment when my father would be too weak to stop him. And suddenly something inside me shifted. Not forgiveness. Not sympathy. Understanding. Because power doesn't disappear overnight. It gets taken. Piece by piece. Carefully. Patiently. The next morning Emily called again. Her voice was quieter than before. "He wants to see you." I didn't need to ask who she meant. My fingers rested against the desk. "No," I said calmly. She inhaled sharply. "Daniel, he's not well." I closed my eyes briefly. Memories flashed through my mind. His voice. His anger. His hand striking my face. His words cutting deeper than anything else ever had. "He made his choice," I said. Emily's voice broke. "He regrets it." Regret. Such a small word. Such a powerless word. And yet, it carries the weight of things that can never be undone. "I'll think about it," I said finally. After the call ended, I sat in silence. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about the truth. And the truth had waited long enough. 3 days later, I stood in front of the Carter Corporation building. The same glass walls. The same towering presence. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. Employees walked past me without recognition. To them, I was just another stranger. Not the son who had once belonged there. Not the boy who had been erased. Just a man in a simple suit. I stepped inside. The air smelled the same. Cold. Controlled. Artificial. Emily waited near the elevators. When she saw me, her eyes filled with relief. "You came," she whispered. I nodded once. Not for him. For the truth. We rode the elevator in silence. The floor felt like a step backward in time. When the doors opened, my heart didn't race. It didn't break. It stayed steady. Because I was no longer the boy who had been thrown out. I was someone else now. Emily led me to his office. The door stood slightly open. She stopped. "He's inside." I nodded. She stepped back, giving me the choice, giving me the control. For a moment I just stood there. Not afraid. Not angry. Just ready. I pushed the door open and saw him. Richard Carter. My father. He sat behind the desk, but he looked smaller, weaker, older. His hair had grayed more than I remembered. His shoulders, once strong and unshakable, now seemed fragile. He looked up. His eyes met mine. And in that moment, the most powerful man I had ever known looked like a stranger. Neither of us spoke at first. Because some silences carry more truth than words ever could. "Daniel," he said finally. His voice was weak. Not the commanding voice I remembered. A human voice. Flawed. Breakable. I stayed where I was. Not moving closer. Not offering comfort. Just existing. "You came," he said. I didn't answer. He swallowed hard. "I didn't think you would." His hands trembled slightly on the desk. I noticed everything. Because pain teaches you to observe. "I know," he continued. "I don't deserve your time." He paused. His eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Regret. Real regret. I made a mistake. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Fragile. Irreversible. I stared at him. Because part of me had waited years to hear those words. And yet, they didn't fix anything. "You didn't just make a mistake," I said quietly. "You destroyed your son." He closed his eyes briefly. Like the truth physically hurt him. "Yes," he whispered. Silence filled the room again. Then I stepped forward and placed the folder on his desk. His eyes moved to it. He opened it slowly. His hands trembled more as he saw the documents. The transfers. The contracts. Victor's name. His breathing became uneven. "You know," I said calmly. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the evidence. "Yes," he whispered. The word barely existed. I felt something twist inside my chest. Not anger. Something else. "He manipulated everything," my father said. His voice broke. I trusted him. Trust. Another fragile thing. Another dangerous thing. "He told me the company was failing because of you," he said. I froze. "He said your decisions were reckless. That you were weakening everything." I said nothing. Because now the truth was complete. "He gave me reports," he continued. "Fake reports." His voice cracked. And I believed him. He finally looked up at me. Tears filled his eyes. "I chose him over my own son." The words landed between us like shattered glass. Sharp. Final. Painful. I was wrong. For the first time in my life he looked small. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just human. Just broken. "I can't fix what I did," he said. "No," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I know." Silence returned. But this silence was different. It wasn't empty. It was honest. After a moment he spoke again. "Victor is taking everything." I already knew. "He's waiting for me to collapse," my father said. His voice was hollow. "And I will." He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was stating a fact. "I deserve it," he whispered. I studied him carefully. This man had once been my entire world. And now he was just a man facing the consequences of his choices. "I'm not here to save you," I said. He nodded. "I know. I'm here to stop him." My father looked up surprised. Not with hope. With confusion. "Why?" he asked. I answered honestly. "Because he doesn't get to win. Not after everything. Not after destroying me. Not after destroying everything. The next weeks were a war. Legal battles. Financial confrontations. Evidence presented. Truth revealed. Victor fought hard. But he hadn't expected me. He hadn't expected the boy he erased to return as the man who could destroy him. Piece by piece his control collapsed. His lies exposed. His theft proven. And when it was over, he lost everything. The company survived. Barely. But it survived. My father stepped down. Not forced. He chose to. Because he understood that some mistakes cost everything. One evening I stood alone in the empty office. The same office where he once ruled. Now it was quiet. Peaceful. He entered slowly behind me. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said. I nodded. He hesitated. "I don't expect forgiveness." I stayed silent. He continued. "But I want you to know. I'm proud of you." The words hit differently now. Not because I needed them, but because I didn't. He walked to the door. Then stopped. "I'm sorry, Daniel." And then he left. This time it was his footsteps fading away. Not mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Because forgiveness isn't always about fixing the past. Sometimes it's about releasing its control over your future. I didn't rebuild his legacy. I built my own. Stronger. Cleaner. Honest. And I never needed his approval again. Because the boy he threw away was the man who saved everything. And that was enough. Thank you for listening to my story. This is Daniel Carter. And this was never just about revenge. It was about truth. It was about loss. It was about becoming stronger than the pain that tried to destroy me. Welcome to Truth Drama Stories, where broken lives find their voice, and where the truth always finds its way home.